Good evening, everybody. Funny you should mention Uber. Got a great story about Uber and how you cannot get an Uber cab in Geneva. And as a result, getting a cab in Geneva is one of the most expensive things you can do on the planet. And it is because, essentially, of vested interests and the closed system that the cabbies and other people of that city create. So there's a sort of example of how not to be open and how it costs you money. I didn't mean to start like that. Hello, everybody. I'm David Simoes-Brown from 100% Open, and it's super to see how so many of you here tonight. I must be in the right business. That's excellent. I'm here because, as Jim very kindly said, I span out from Nesta 5 years ago with my business partner Roland to set up 100% Open. Mainly, we do innovation. Although my topic that I'm speaking on tonight is rather broader than that, so bear with, as they say. I've also got my own self-timing device, so let's see if that works. Super. So, well, in the interest of total transparency, this is a phrase I stole with pride from the Open Data Institute, whom we pitched to write a report on the Generation Open, but I didn't get it. So what I thought I'd do is recycle that information for you here tonight. And what I want to just prove in the next, or talk about in the next 14 or 15 minutes, is that the world is becoming radically more open in all sorts of ways. Not just sustainability, not just innovation, but in government, in science, in education, and of course, a lot of business as well. So I think we're living in an era of inflection. So let's just talk very briefly about this new TED book, which I suspect was the inspiration for tonight's festivities, was it not? Okay, so it's a book called Radical Openness, and it's well worth reading. And what Don Tapscott, one of the co-authors, the other guy is Anthony Williams, says is the arc of history is a positive one. And it's all pointed towards openness. Now, of course, that is absolutely underpinned and accelerated by the World Wide Web. Who here can remember life before the web? It's only 20 years ago. Anyone? Yeah. Hasn't it changed? Hasn't it changed a lot? Don't we all get a lot of emails? So we've entered a new era, kind of underpinned by that, one that's characterized by openness, in one which our world and our relationships have become increasingly interconnected. But it's not a new thing. It was cool a long time ago when Gutenberg invented the printing press, which Martin Luther described as God's highest act of grace. So 1440, Gutenberg, a goldsmith, invented this thing, and it created access. It created access in a language people could understand to knowledge, and that's kind of what's been going on ever since. So when Don talks about arc of history, he's not talking about, since the millennium. He's talking about hundreds and hundreds of years. Of course, so the internet is democratizing knowledge even further. And what that means is it's wresting public discourse away from politicians, away from business people like us, to, well, people like us. And that's something worth bearing in mind as we go through this. And in subjects like sustainability, I've got a couple of case histories I'm going to go through later. It's important to realize that we, as representatives of business or companies, do not control that discourse. We don't have control over our information anymore. It's going to be out there. So just so you don't have to read the book, it's down here in four words. So the drivers for openness are the digital revolution. I've touched on that already. The net generation, that phrase, digital natives. My daughter, who's 14, has got more social media accounts than she's got pairs of jeans, and that's saying something. I can't keep up with it. So, and her attitude is very interesting. It's part of the air she breathes. It's part of the air she breathes. And that's going to bring empowerment, which is the number 3 on this. Don't really want to go into Arab Spring, because the jury's out on that. But you'll start to see much more political movements being energized by the ability to communicate. We've just kicked off a crowdsourcing site for the ICRC, in fact, International Committee of the Red Cross, and what we're doing there is getting everyone, I kind of mean everyone, including beneficiaries themselves, people in refugee camps, victims of violence, to suggest ideas, to come up with solutions to their own problems. So gone is that patronizing model where we help people, we help them to help themselves. And that's part of that arc of history that Don was talking about. Transparency, the end of secrecy, I just mentioned that. WikiLeaks is just the tip of the iceberg. Mark my words. But for us, there's a crisis of trust. This has been in market research reports for decades now, hasn't it? But no one trusts anyone anymore. They don't trust the police, they don't trust the Queen, they don't trust the government, they don't trust people in business. So what do you do about this crisis of trust? I think that open is a mirror image of trust. The more open you are, the more trusted you'll be. The more open and honest you are about things you get wrong, the more people will like you and forgive you. And that's an important underpinning to how to conduct business in the 21st century, I think. So, you're all very quiet tonight. Shall I tell some jokes? Better carry on. So I've got 10 sort of stories open this. And so some of these might touch on your fields of interest, some of them might not, but let's see how we go. And each one is exemplified by a kind of 100% open aphorism. And this is that open innovation, and in fact collaboration, is all about give and all about get. And when your give is balanced by your get, happiness ensues. And also notice that it's the give first. It's a spirit of generosity rather than the spirit of acquisitiveness that will get you this trust, this collaboration of which I speak. So the first subject I want to talk about is open business models. And why am I starting there? Because I love this case history. We had a little bit to do with it a long time ago, but this is a case history about legoideas.com. So who has been on this site and I'm kind of, yeah, one or two people? Anyone submitted a design on this site? Hey, how did you do?
Well, I work for Lego, so...
Right, you can mark my work later. Thank you. So I'm going to big you up now. So I think this is a brilliant thing for two reasons. One, well, is it because it's a fantastic site? Yes, it's good. Is it because Lego is a loved brand? There are 1 million users on this site. Yes, it is. But actually, I think what's genius about this is the business model. So Lego will give you, if you win, 1% of the revenue of your innovation. That is the genius. The genius is sharing. That's the give. And the get is 3 or 4 or possibly even 5 now of the most successful models that Lego produced since the turn of the millennium. So it kind of works. So that's the business model, which isn't immediately apparent there. And it works. Okay, so that's the first thing. Now, of course, there is more to life than one business model. There's a whole bunch there, and come and see me afterwards if you're interested. But there is, suffice it to say, a graduation from closed all the way through to co-creative with a whole bunch of different underpinning ways you can relate to people in business. So do you want a delivery partnership? Do you want to rely on licensing? Do you want to do joint R&D? Do you want to create a JV or go open source? There's a whole bunch of new ways that are being collated and experimented with right now that are an alternative to traditional closed business. Okay. This is unfortunate and true. No matter who you are, most of the smartest people work for somebody else. So what are you going to do? Hire them all? No. Bill Joy, when he said this, understood that it actually meant that you had to collaborate with people and have small pieces of a lot of people's time rather than all of their time. And for people in business, this is the reality, isn't it? So I'm going to talk about another short case history, which was E.ON. E.ON, the power... Anyone from E.ON here? I better check. Right, good. Okay, so this is about customer collaboration. It occurred to E.ON one day that all they'd been doing really is generating and distributing electricity and sending bills to people. What a narrow relationship that is, sending bills to people. You sell electricity, they give you money. It transpires that E.ON know where a lot of people live. It also transpires that a lot of those people are innovators, and they have patents, and they have small companies, and they work for potential partners. So this was Home of the Future was a project where E.ON re-looked at its relationship with its customers and said, instead of asking, what can we sell to you more, it asked the question, what can we buy from you? And what would your markets look like? What would your innovation stream look like if you looked at your customers as suppliers as well? And this worked terribly well. We ended up with two joint ventures, one between Unilever and them, and one between the Royal Mail and them. And there's a whole bunch of innovations that came in, lighting systems, electricity measurement companies, and so forth. But it was simply a change in perspective. Okay? So that's what I mean by open collaboration, which is the second one. I need to speed up. So what is open innovation? I hear you cry. What is open innovation? It's this. It's innovating with partners. So far, so good. But the important bit is sharing the risks and sharing the rewards. Companies love to share risks. They're less keen on sharing the rewards. So again, it's getting that balance right. I'll give you one quick case history of that. So again, this is something we were involved in. This was when they were Orange. And Orange came to us and said, OK, we need a new customer loyalty mechanic. Who here remembers Orange Wednesdays? There's 2 for 1 cinema deal. Right, so this is basically the new Orange Wednesdays. But how do you find the new Orange Wednesdays? Do you appoint an intermediary? Do you, scour the web? Well, it's the second thing. So we essentially found a little company called Last Second Tickets that had all the right relationships with venues and was selling unsold inventory at a small scale, and enabled Orange to do a deal with them. So Orange represented them as a scale partner, and Last Second Tickets represented the clever spark that was going to generate this customer loyalty. So that's an example of how big and small can collaborate. Importantly, we persuaded Orange to put the business model on the website, so people knew they were looking for an acquisition or some sort of major investment. So that's another lesson. Be clear about what you're going to give. As an ideas man, it pains me to have to show this slide. But I'm afraid it's true. Ideas are literally worthless. You can't buy your dinner with an idea. You can buy your dinner with what comes in from an innovation. And that, of course, is an entirely different thing. So I would contend that the 21st century isn't about owns to intellectual property. It's about who executes first and who executes best. At the risk of embarrassing my next speaker, here's a picture of his CEO who says very good things about this. Essentially, I'm running out of time, so I'm just going to say Tesla did a very brave thing last year and opened up 2,700 EV patents in order to, I suspect, and we'll hear later, lead the market rather than follow it. So the underlying principle there is if you have leading intellectual property, you're better off let your competitors use it, which is precisely what we've done. This is all our stuff. So go on the web and have a look. It's the 100% open toolkit, and it's everything we've ever done or are likely to do with instructions on how to do it. If you get any issues with that, come and see me. But essentially, we want to start the market, growing, and therefore we have no qualms about giving away our intellectual property. Tim Berners-Lee did a great TED talk a couple of years back, and this is his vision for how the internet is going to change as radically going forwards as it has in the past. He is calling for linked documents. So this theme is all about open data. Sorry, not linked documents, linked data. So what Tim Berners-Lee is saying is if you free your data, you can have a creative, a malleable, and inventive resource. So his call is raw data now. And now that's difficult for people like drug companies, as you can imagine. But there is Sir Andrew Whitty, CEO of GSK, saying we want to share clinical trial data that could halve the development time for cures to critical diseases. And as we know, the pharma industry has a patents cliff. They're running out of IP. So in a sense, that's a good strategy, is it not? The Human Genome Project is another example of that. I can't believe people were trying to patent human genes a few years ago. Can you remember that? That's outrageous. And there are various other initiatives which I haven't got time to go into on that. Here's a case history you might be interested in. And it's from Interface, the people who made, I think, these carpet tiles. Anyone from Interface here? Good. They say we're on the edge of an industrial evolution, which is quite nice. And the thing I'm going to talk about is networks. Networks is the re-engineering of a supply chain. This carpet is made of nylon 6. Nylon 6 is a high-grade industrial product made out of oil, obviously. And if you want to recycle it into carpet tiles, you can only find it in two real places. One is in the windscreen of cars, in the sandwich bit in the middle, and the other is in fishing nets in places like the Philippines and Cameroon, I mean. So this was a story about re-engineering their own supply chain at $12 a ton, which is the price they pay for raw nylon. If we can switch, using the same underpinning business, from $12 a ton from raw oil to recycling nets from the beaches, then it's a great thing, isn't it? It gives local people employment, it protects the fisheries, and you create a recycled, sustainable product. There's a whole bunch of examples like that, and again, I wish I had time to talk about them, but I want to just big up IKEA for their sustainable cotton initiative, and that's kind of me. I crave your indulgence for a minute longer. Thank you. Okay. I was going to talk, but it's a bit boring, so I won't, about politics. And if you haven't heard of the Open Government Partnership, check it out. It's actually quite radical. It means that governments like ours are opening up all sorts of data, like who owns what, how much money the electricity and the mining companies make, and all that. So if there are now, I think, 65 countries in the world who have signed up to the Open Government Initiative, and that's part of the empowerment I was talking about earlier. If strategy is about being different, why would you leave it to people who've been doing strategy all their lives, like me, or management consultants, or the boards of companies? Here was a way in which Oxfam enlisted the 3,000 members of its staff to write a new strategy about being more efficient and cutting costs. Again, I haven't got time to go into it, but they used a crowdsourcing platform to ask the people to make the cuts, not to have the cuts made to them. And it's just a little way of bringing to life how even things as sacrosanct as strategy, which used to be handed down from on high to the workforce, is now being generated throughout that very workforce as well. Okay. Another thing I'm not going to talk about is open design. If you're any designers here tonight? Okay, one or two. I believe, and you can argue with me later in the bar if you don't, that design in the 21st century is about curation. It's about picking good stuff rather than doing good stuff. And that's because people like this at 99 Designs are giving design customers access to a whole wealth of talent. What they can't do is tell you what's good or not, and therefore the role of design, I think, is changing. There's an excellent book on that called Open Design Now, if you're interested in that kind of thing. Open education, you've all heard of the Open University. Now we're into MOOCs, massive online courses. And you can get from MIT a qualification in atomic optical physics, or the principles and practices of drug development, or reproductive politics in the United States, if you want. There are really no barriers to what you can do with your mind at the moment. And open education is only just starting to change the potential for the global citizens. Okay. So there's a whole bunch of stuff I didn't have time to talk to you tonight. This is a great brief, Jim. Thank you. And I could go on about open culture, or open access, or open science, or open standards, or open agriculture, or open energy. Open anything. Have fun, Google it, and see where it takes you. I would just leave you then with one conclusion and one challenge. If the world is becoming radically open in all spheres of human endeavour, government, as I said, business, science, education, collaboration, it's going to be the brave that take the laurels. So we're 100% open. You can see my DNA on the web. My challenge to you is, how open do you want to be? Thank you.